London hides far more than history. In its churches, alleys, and forgotten ruins, dark, restless shadows still linger. Tonight we uncover 10 haunted places where the past refuses to rest. In the bustling city of London, amid the rush of traffic and the glitter of glass towers, stands a church that seems to belong more to shadow than to light. St Magnus the Martyr, its spire rising quietly above Lower Thames Street, has long carried whispers of a presence cloaked in darkness. Step through its doors, and you enter not only a sanctuary of prayer, but a threshold where the past still stirs. The church's story stretches back to the medieval age. Once standing at the foot of Old London Bridge, St Magnus was rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1666 by Sir Christopher Wren. Its stones echo with centuries of worship, funeral rites, and solemn prayers. Among its honoured dead lies Miles Coverdale, the Bishop of Exeter, remembered for his translation of the Bible into English. His tomb rests within a reminder of faith and scholarship. But for all its sacred history, visitors do not always speak of light and devotion. More often, they recall the shadows, for it is in those shadows that a figure appears, a hooded presence, robed in gloom, drifting silently through the aisles. Witnesses say the apparition moves slowly, lingering near Coverdale's tomb, as though keeping a vigil no mortal service can end. The most unsettling claim is not its shape, but its emptiness. Some who dared to look within the hood insist that no face was there at all. Only a void, deep and impenetrable, gazing back. One evening, a worshipper paused to pray alone. He later confessed that a coldness spread across the pews and a sensation as if someone stood just behind him. Turning, he saw the cowled figure, still silent, unmoving. Compelled by dread and curiosity, he leaned closer. Where he expected eyes, there was only darkness without end. The vision dissolved before him, leaving nothing but the echo of his own heartbeat. He left the church trembling, certain that the ground beneath his feet held more than memory. Today, St Magnus the Martyr remains a place of worship and heritage, its bells marking the hours of the city. Yet when the bells fall quiet, the question lingers: who or what still keeps watch among its tombs? Down by the river in Wapping, where the water slaps against old stone, lies a flight of steps worn smooth by centuries of sailors and travelers. By day, they seem unremarkable, yet by night, a colder history seeps up from the Thames itself. These are the Wapping Old Stairs, better known as the Thames Steps. The steps are rooted deep in England's turbulent past. For generations, they provided passage for dock workers, merchants, even prisoners bound for execution at nearby Execution Dock. But it is one grim figure who has tied his fate to this place. In 1688, during the upheaval of the Glorious Revolution, the notorious judge George Jeffreys sought to flee the country. Known as the hanging judge for the harsh punishments he delivered after the Monmouth Rebellion, Jeffreys disguised himself as a sailor and attempted to escape. His disguise failed. He was recognized, seized at the riverside, and dragged away in disgrace. Since then, locals whisper that Judge Jeffreys never left. His spirit, burdened by fear and infamy, is said to return to the steps where his desperate bid for freedom ended. Some witnesses describe a man in flowing robes, a shadow pacing back and forth as if waiting for a ship that will never arrive. Others speak of a figure in coarse sailor's clothes, his face flickering between despair and rage, fading into the mist that rises from the water. One late-night walker told of hearing boots strike the wet stone, just behind him, heavy and deliberate. When he turned, he saw only the dark curve of the river and the faint shimmer of something moving ahead of him. A few steps later came the sound of breathing, ragged and close, as if someone labored in panic at his shoulder. Yet he was alone. Only the tide moved, pulling at the base of the steps with a sound like a long, mournful sigh. Today, the stairs remain a curious landmark, tucked beside the old riverside pub, their history written in every worn edge of stone. People climb them without incident, never realizing that to some eyes, Judge Jeffreys is still there, pacing endlessly between earth and water. Perhaps it is fitting that a man who condemned so many now finds no peace of his own. Beneath the bustling streets of Greenwich, where trains and traffic thunder past, there lies another world. Davy's Wine Vaults, a place of laughter, music, and clinking glasses, but beneath the surface, darker currents flow. Its cellars run deep, and some who work there claim those cellars are never empty. The building itself dates back to the 19th century, when Greenwich bustled with maritime trade. Ships brought wine, coal, and goods from every corner of the world, and the vaults beneath the pub were carved into a labyrinth of storage. To the casual drinker today, it feels like a quaint slice of history. Yet to those who know the stories, the atmosphere is different, heavy, cold, and unwelcoming, especially below ground. Staff whisper of three particular figures. Mary said to haunt the basement, George, a presence on the ground floor, and a little girl who drifts between them, silent watching. Their appearances are sudden, unsettling, and never announced. One former worker admitted he dreaded clearing a private dining room alone. On more than one occasion, he caught sight of an old woman standing in the corner, her expression hard, commanding him to leave. For weeks afterward, he refused to step inside that room without company. Another time, a bartender closing for the night glanced up to find a man waiting at the counter, smiling faintly as if ready to order. But when he approached, the figure ducked down, vanishing beneath the bar. Searching frantically, he found no trace of anyone in the room. Stranger still, one night in the basement bar, two members of staff joked nervously about Mary's ghost. In that instant, a deep growl rolled out from the darkness behind them. Terrified, they fled, abandoning their duties, locking up in haste, too shaken to return. Those who know the vaults often speak of the weight of the place, a sense of being watched, an invisible pressure that settles on the chest. Even the bravest confess they would never linger alone in the basement. Today, Davy's Wine Vaults is still a popular stop in Greenwich, its upper rooms filled with warmth and chatter. But if you descend into the cellar, past the laughter, into the stone chambers where light falters, you may feel what others have felt before you. A warning, perhaps, or simply a reminder that history has a way of leaving shadows behind. Amid the grandeur of the Mall in Westminster stands Clarence House, an elegant royal residence. To most, it is a place of ceremony, tradition, and the trappings of monarchy. Yet behind its stately facade, the air sometimes carries a different note, one of lingering sorrow and of presence unseen. Clarence House was built in the early 19th century for the Duke of Clarence, later King William IV. Over the years, it has sheltered generations of royalty, from Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, to the current king when he was Prince of Wales. Its history is woven into the very fabric of Britain's monarchy, its rooms echoing with receptions, royal duties, and the daily life of princes and dukes. But even in such splendid surroundings, shadows have found a way to remain. The most enduring tale centers on the Duke of Connaught, the third son of Queen Victoria. A soldier statesman and longtime resident of the house, he lived here until his death in 1942. It is said that his loyalty to Clarence House was so deep that even death could not separate him from its walls. Witnesses have spoken of a greyish, smoky form that drifts through the corridors, appearing without warning, fading just as suddenly. Some believe this hazy figure is none other than the Duke himself, wandering the rooms he once called home. One member of staff described a late-night patrol along the upper floor when a sudden veil of mist began to form at the far end of the hall. It thickened, slowly curling, as though the building itself exhaled a ghostly breath. Within it, a shadow seemed to shift, but before he could make sense of what he saw, the vapor dissolved into nothing, leaving only the faint scent of smoke. He finished his rounds quickly, unwilling to linger. Others have felt cold drafts sweep past in rooms that should have been still, or the sensation of being watched by someone just out of sight. Though no harm has ever been reported, few who work there dismiss the stories entirely. Today, Clarence House remains a functioning royal residence, a symbol of continuity in a modern age. Visitors see elegant drawing rooms and portraits of history. Yet when night falls and the corridors fall silent, some say the Duke of Connaught still keeps watch, unwilling to leave the home he loved so deeply. Beside the Royal Docks in East London stands the Connaught Hotel. At first glance, it is a modest building, a place for travelers to rest before their journeys continue. Yet behind its doors lies a story, steeped not in comfort, but in tragedy. The hotel has been part of the Docklands for more than a century, surviving changes as the surrounding area shifted from warehouses and shipyards to modern glass towers. For dock workers, sailors, and later tourists, it has offered warmth and shelter. But history tells us that not all who checked in found peace within its walls. Among the most persistent tales is that of a young woman broken by despair who ended her life in the hotel. Some say she threw herself from an upper floor, others that she perished quietly in one of the rooms. Her restless spirit is believed to remain unable or unwilling to depart from the place where sorrow overcame her. Witnesses describe her as a semi-clad figure, drifting along the corridors, her form pale and shimmering as though caught forever between presence and absence. One staff member encountered her in the dead of night. Making his way through the hallway, he saw her standing ahead, a woman silent, barely clothed, her head bowed. At first he thought she was a guest in need of help, but as he stepped forward, she raised her face. What he saw drained the color from his own. In that instant, she vanished, leaving only the cold echo of her presence. He fled the building, refusing to return until morning light. Guests, too, have spoken of strange disturbances, doors opening and closing without cause, sudden chills that cut through heated rooms, and the uneasy feeling of being watched as they sleep. Though some dismiss these stories as imagination, the legend of the Lady of the Fox remains one of the most unsettling in London's East End. Today, the Connaught Hotel still welcomes travelers. Its dining room fills with conversation, its rooms provide shelter. Yet among the bustle, those who know the tales glance uneasily at the staircases and corridors, wondering if the sorrow of the past still walks with them. On the banks of the Thames in Greenwich stands one of Britain's most treasured ships, the Cutty Sark, her masts rising proudly against the skyline, once raced across the oceans, carrying tea from China and wool from Australia. Today, she rests in dry dock as a celebrated museum. Yet those who walk her decks after dark say the sea still clings to her, and so do the dead. Launched in 1869, the Cutty Sark was one of the fastest clippers of her age. But speed came at a price. The ship battled violent storms off Cape Horn, where waves towered like walls and winds tore men from the rigging. Sailors were lost overboard, crushed by shifting cargo, or struck down by disease on voyages that lasted months. Their lives and sometimes their deaths are bound to the ship's timbers. Visitors and staff have long reported that not all of those sailors ever left. A lone figure is often seen high in the rigging, swaying in silence as though scanning the horizon for land. Some say he is a crewman who perished during a storm, doomed to keep watch forever. Others describe sudden blasts of icy air drifting across the deck on summer days, or a faint mist rolling between the masts when no weather should allow it. One guide recalled locking up after an evening event when he heard heavy boots pacing overhead. Certain a colleague was still aboard, he climbed the ladder to the deck. There, under the glow of the dockside lights, the footsteps continued, but no one was present. He stood frozen as the sound passed him, crossing the planks with deliberate weight before fading into silence. Later, he admitted it felt as if unseen men were still running to their stations, their ship caught in a storm that never ends. Others speak of muffled groans and cries carried on the wind like the voices of men struggling against the sea. Cold spots bloom suddenly in enclosed cabins, only to vanish as quickly as they came. Some believe the very act of preserving the ship has preserved its ghosts as well. By day, the Cutty Sark is alive with visitors, families, and school children marveling at her beauty. But when night falls and the tide laps quietly against the shore, a different crew seems to awaken. Sailors who cannot disembark, bound forever to their vessel, scanning an endless horizon that lies just out of reach. In West London, between Fulham Road and Old Brompton Road, lies one of the great Victorian cemeteries. Brompton Cemetery is a place of striking beauty, long avenues lined with limes and chestnuts, grand monuments rising above ivy and moss, and the domed chapel standing like a sentinel at its heart. Yet for all its splendor, this is still a city of the dead, and the dead are said to stir. Opened in 1840, Brompton was created as part of London's magnificent 7 cemeteries, designed to ease overcrowding in the churchyards. Over 200,000 souls rest here, soldiers, artists, aristocrats, and ordinary Londoners alike. The grounds themselves feel like a labyrinth of memory where every tomb tells a story. But some stories refuse to stay in stone. The most unusual tale whispered about Brompton is that of a phantom red squirrel. At first it sounds almost playful, a curious echo of life among the graves. Walkers say they have seen it scampering across headstones, its tail flicking brightly in the gloom before it darts into the undergrowth. Yet when followed, the creature simply vanishes, gone without trace, leaving only a ripple of leaves. Though it may seem a gentle spectre, others have reported stranger sensations, the brush of invisible paws against their shoes, or the impression of being watched from the shadows. In a cemetery as vast as this, where silence can feel oppressive, even the smallest disturbance takes on a chilling weight. One mourner recounted pausing at a grave when he noticed the squirrel at his side. It perched for a moment, bright-eyed, before leaping towards the ivy, and then it dissolved mid-air, as though the cemetery itself had swallowed it whole. The man left, convinced that the animal was not of this world, but a fragment of something caught between memory and spirit. Brompton Cemetery is now a place of heritage as well as rest, managed as a public park, admired by visitors for its architecture and calm. Yet beneath the sunshine and the green, the cemetery carries more than history. In its quietest corners, where the wind dies and the stillness thickens, even the scurry of a small ghost can remind us that no place of the dead is ever entirely at peace. Tucked away in the quiet back streets of Belgravia, hidden down a narrow mews, stands a pub with a reputation far darker than its quaint appearance suggests. The Grenadier Its whitewashed walls adorned with regimental emblems is said to be one of the most haunted inns in London. And like many old pubs, its ghost story begins with a card game that ended in betrayal. The Grenadier was once an officers' mess for the Duke of Wellington's regiment. Here, soldiers would gather to drink, gamble, and boast of their exploits. Legend tells that one young officer caught cheating at cards paid for his dishonesty with his life. Dragged down into the cellar, he was beaten so savagely by his comrades that he died of his injuries. His blood stained the floor, and it is said his spirit never found rest. From that day forward, strange happenings have been recorded. Shadows move across the walls, though no one passes by. Heavy footsteps echo on the staircases when the building lies empty. Dogs brought inside grow restless, staring at corners with hackles raised. Patrons describe sudden icy blasts of air cutting through the warmth of the pub. In September, the month the officer is said to have died, activity reaches its peak. One former landlord spoke of being shoved violently in the cellar as though unseen hands had pushed him aside. Startled, he noticed a pungent smell of smoke filling the chamber, though no fire burned. On another occasion, glasses rattled violently on their shelves while the bar stood silent. More than one visitor has glimpsed a pale face at an upper window, vanishing before they could climb the stairs. Even now, customers pin banknotes to the ceiling in tribute said to help settle the officer's gambling debt. The ritual has become part of the pub's folklore, a silent offering to appease the restless soul. But whether the gestures comfort him, no one can say. By day, the Grenadier is a welcoming spot full of history charm and the glow of candles. But when the night deepens and the mews outside falls silent, those who linger sometimes feel a different presence. The watchful eyes of a betrayed officer forever pacing the rooms where his life was cut short. In the quiet greenery of Holland Park lie the broken remains of what was once one of London's grandest mansions. Holland House, a Jacobean palace of red brick and gilded chambers, stood for centuries as a center of wealth, culture, and power. But war reduced it to ruin, and within those ruins, a darker figure is said to walk still. Built in the early 17th century, Holland House became a gathering place for statesmen, poets, and nobility. Its grand gilt room glittered with light and conversation. Yet the splendor was shadowed by the fate of one of its most infamous owners, Henry Rich, the Earl of Holland. Once a trusted courtier, his fortunes turned during the English Civil War. Accused of treachery, he was executed by beheading in 1649. Since then, stories have circulated that Lord Holland has not abandoned his home. On certain nights, particularly around midnight, witnesses speak of a headless figure emerging from a hidden doorway within the gilt room. The apparition clutches its severed head in its hands, gliding silently across the chamber before dissolving into the walls. Rarely is it seen outdoors. His haunting seems bound to the splendor he once enjoyed and betrayed. One wartime guard stationed in the ruins after the Blitz told of a night patrol when he entered the surviving wing. He froze at the sight before him, a pale figure richly dressed, carrying its head with grim composure. It passed straight through the shattered room, leaving the guard too terrified to return. He spoke of it only once, certain that the destroyed house still belonged to its restless lord. Even today, the ruins of Holland House are visited by thousands who come to stroll the park or attend open-air theatre. By daylight, the grounds are peaceful, full of birdsong and laughter. But when darkness falls and the ruins stand silent against the night sky, the gilt room seems to breathe with memory. Some say, if you linger long enough, you may hear the faint echo of footsteps or feel a sudden chill as the Earl of Holland returns to walk the rooms he lost through treachery and blood. Amid the winding lanes of Billingsgate, hidden between tall warehouses and narrow passageways, stands St Mary at Hill. At first glance, it appears unassuming, its modest tower half lost among the city's buildings. Yet this church has stood for more than 900 years, and within its stones lies a story that refuses to rest quietly. Founded in the 12th century, St Mary at Hill survived the Great Fire of 666, was rebuilt by Sir Christopher Wren, and weathered centuries of London's shifting life. For generations, merchants and sailors from the nearby docks prayed here before setting out to sea. But with such long history come shadows, and one of those shadows belongs to a woman whose grave was disturbed. In the 19th century, major renovations forced the removal of thousands of burials from the crypt. Among the bodies was Alice Hackney, once interred here with her husband. Their resting place was broken apart, their bones moved elsewhere. Since that time, parishioners and visitors alike whisper that Alice has never stopped searching for the spot she lost. They speak of a pale figure drifting silently through the nave, pausing at pews as if confused, before vanishing into the stonework. At times, she is seen in the churchyard, hands clasped, head bowed in quiet sorrow. Yet she never lingers long, as though even in death she cannot find what she seeks. More recent tales come not from the crypt, but from the alley outside between the church and Lovett Lane. One passerby described being engulfed by thick cigarette smoke, pungent and sudden, though no one else was near. From within came the sound of a woman coughing, sharp and unmistakable. Then the air cleared, leaving the lane silent and empty. Whether this too is Alice or some other wandering presence, no one can say. And yet St Mary at Hill remains more than a place of unease. It is still a church of worship, music, and community. By day, its choir fills the air with light and harmony. Visitors marvel at its carved wood and ancient windows. Even the ghost stories, though unsettling, remind us of something human: the longing for rest, the desire to be near those we love, the hope that bonds are not broken by time. Perhaps Alice's search is not a curse, but a message that memory and devotion endure long after the stones are moved and the graves forgotten. In this quiet corner of the City of London, the past may linger, but so too does the resilience of faith and the comfort of knowing that love, even when unsettled, never truly dies. Our journey through London's haunted places ends here. 10 sights, just a glimpse of the shadows this city hides. Which story unsettled you most? Share your thoughts. Pass this video to others who enjoy such tales, and subscribe to Creepy Experience to join us on the next step into Britain's haunted past.